had to recount this story to somebody a couple of years ago, and obviously this testimony, I'll tell you, but I was weeks and months old, so I don't remember it personally. So I phoned my mum, because I said, I'm going to tell somebody my testimony. If you could just fill me in, tell me everything that happened from their perspective, which she did. And so I was about 6 weeks old when my parents realised that I just wasn't reacting to things in the way they'd expect, and particularly sounds. I just was had a very limited reaction to noises and to loud noises. And so they were concerned, and so they took me to see a doctor, and they ran a couple of basic tests and quickly diagnosed that I had some form of loss of hearing. But they said to be really sure, you're going to want to go and see a consultant, and they'll do some more tests and really kind of diagnose the issue. So Mum and Dad left the doctors with this news that I had some sort of loss of hearing. It made sense because I wasn't reacting to things, but obviously concerned about it. And when I was speaking to Mum and she was recounting what had happened, they said, we did lots of our own in-house tests to just check if your hearing had recovered. I said, what do you mean by that? I said, well, when I'd come in in the night to sort of check up on you, or if you were crying, I'd come in and make as much noise as possible. I wouldn't try and sneak in and make as much noise as possible, but no reaction. Or Dad used to very safely drop boxes of Lego right next to my head just to check if you got any kind of reaction out of me, and they got nothing. So they were really concerned, and a few weeks went by and I had my appointment with the consultant, and again they ran some more tests, and at that point I was basically diagnosed as having profound loss of hearing, and my parents were essentially told, you need to prepare and understand about how to raise a child that is essentially deaf, because that's what it looked like. They said, really, you need to go for a brain scan in a few weeks' time, but that's the diagnosis at this point, is your child is clinically deaf, and obviously there's nothing we can do about that. It's really sad, but that's what you kind of need to prepare for. And so Mum and Dad again left the consultants, and Mum was recording, said, overwhelmed by kind of the news of that, but also a confidence about the fact that it didn't have to be the case. My parents are both Christians and raised me up throughout our childhood in a Christian household, and they had very strong faith, and they believed that God could heal me. And so in the weeks after the consultant's appointment, but before the proper brain scan, they were just praying, and they asked the church to pray, they asked the elders to pray, friends, family, anybody they could, pray for James, pray that his ears would be opened and that he'd hear. Carried on doing their own DIY tests at home, dropping boxes of Lego and doing anything they can to kind of trigger a reaction from me, but didn't get anything. So I went in for the brain scan a few weeks after the consultant's appointment, and my mum said she turned to my dad as they were walking through the hospital, and she just said, I really believe he's going to be fine. I really believe there's going to be no issues. And so I went in for my scan, and the doctors came out, and they turned to my dad and said, we're incredibly confused, but there is no sign on this brain scan of there being any issue with James's hearing at all. We can't see any problems. And so obviously Mum and Dad felt, well, we're not confused. We know what's happened. And the doctors kind of went through the motions, because obviously they have to do their bit. And then Mum says she remembers just walking out the hospital, and she said, it's literally, I suddenly just started responding to everything and lifting my head and hearing noises and looking around at the hospital, and just suddenly I was reacting to things that were happening around me. And it's just as if in that moment my ears were just opened, and I've not had any issues with my hearing since. I've gone on to play the drums for years and years and years, and I think it's only as I grew up that I kind of understood the significance of what happened to me, and and even just recently asking my mum to tell me the story, and hearing about how many people were praying for me, hearing about the fact that on paper, there's nothing you can do about that situation, but the difference that having faith and believing and praying, and I'm so thankful that my parents had that faith. I'm so thankful that my family and the church were praying for me, and I've not had a single issue with my hearing since then, and I'm just incredibly grateful for their faith on my behalf to pray and see the breakthrough in that situation.
Brilliant. Do you think Jesus can do it for anybody?
I think he can do it for anybody, and I've seen him do many more things in my life, healings, physical healings, even recently. And so I have absolute confidence that if he can do it for me, a small baby, he can do it for anybody.